Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly edition of the Wrap. I'm Laura Leslie, WRAL Capitol Bureau Chief.
And I'm Travis Fain, one of WRAL's state government reporters.
Yeah, it's been a busy week this week. Legislators finally came back after a 2 week hiatus. Nothing too pressing time wise on their agenda. At least that's what they were saying on Wednesday. But it does sound as if we're going to be seeing some of their old favorites coming back again. You might remember there were a lot of bills that Cooper vetoed over the years, and actually 47 vetoes between 2019, when Democrats broke the veto proof majority, and 2022. So a lot of those bills are things that are pretty high on the Republicans' agenda. Things like requiring sheriffs to cooperate with ICE, for example, or expanding gun laws to make it easier to carry concealed weapons in more places. That's another big one. Some of the social issues like critical race theory, LGBTQ in school curriculums. Those are bills that did not get anywhere or did not become law, during the last 4 years. But Moore said, he said he thinks you can expect that the things that they were real close to, but where they weren't able to sort of, get over the edge on, you could probably expect those to come back. So, if you thought this was going to be a bumpy year already, guess what? It just got bumpier.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that we'll see kind of culture war style bills. We'll see obviously too an abortion bill. That is going to get real interesting real fast. Republicans are working in these working groups that the Speaker of the House has told us about. And I mean, what we're hearing is kind of maybe a ban after the 13-week mark. I know that some social conservatives are going to push for much more, a heartbeat bill, but I don't know that I see the support out there for that. But I mean, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to any legislative session.
Yeah, and it like you said, I think they're going to have to sort of thread the needle within their own caucus. But they made it pretty clear on Wednesday, at least. I would say Moore did, that any deal that they come to, he says there's not going to be any daylight between the House and the Senate. So they're going to have this all worked out in caucuses. And then he said basically it's all going to be negotiated out. Every semicolon, every comma, every period. And he said that, that they're not going to allow any amendments on the floor. And I said, well, what about public comment? And he said, well, we're already talking to stakeholders. I'm like, no, not stakeholders, like the public, who is also a stakeholder, right? And he said, well, we might make changes to it after it goes through committee. So I, okay, if past performance is any indication, probably not, but we will wait and see.
Yeah, so it's going to emerge, and that's probably going to be the bill, and the governor will probably veto it, and then we'll talk about whether or not Republicans can overturn. We'll see. I've got a story coming out, I think, this weekend. I'm just breaking down some of the different bills. Bill filing opened on Wednesday, kind of just walking people through what's out there. There's an interesting bill from Senator Jim Bergen that is like a hospital competition bill. It would give the Attorney General more power to review and potentially block hospital mergers. There's a bill that you flagged that is a single source contract bill, a company called Guru, Gooru, that makes some sort of educational software, would get up to a 3-year contract under that bill. It's like a learning loss, pandemic learning loss response, right, Laura?
Yeah, it is, and I look at their website, and like they haven't updated their blog since about 2021, and it looks like there's only 4 or 5 school districts that are at least listed as working with them, and so it sounds like maybe not necessarily an intuitive choice for a statewide program. Maybe it's a pilot. I don't know, for that kind of money,
I
but no, we're
believe it's a pilot, yeah.
yeah, we're definitely interested in learning more about why that particular group was chosen. That's for sure. Another interesting bill out there is the cash bill. That's a bill. I think Brendan Jones is the one who put that out, and that's the bill that would require all businesses to accept cash money.
Yeah, that's going to be a talker bill, I think. I spoke briefly to Jones. He's texting back or emailing back and forth, rather. And he basically says, look, a lot of people in rural communities, and he represents a rural area. He's from Columbus County. They don't have a bank card, and he doesn't want them to be shut out of being able to buy stuff. This will just be in person. You wouldn't have to accept $100 bills or larger. I'm gonna be interested to see though if like the Retail Merchants Association, what do they think about this bill? This is one of those where I think the general public might look at it and say, heck yeah. And some business interests might say, not so fast. So we'll see. But I'm guessing that's my early talker bill, Laura, for this legislative session.
I'll be surprised if the chamber lets that go forward, because there
Me
are an
too.
awful lot of businesses these days that are credit only. And I agree with you. That is inconvenient for some people, and actually, frankly, discriminatory probably in some ways. But that seems to be the direction that things are moving. So it's interesting. We got to mention the big story of the week, of course, which is Beth Wood with a continuing big story of the week. We had some Instagram videos shared with us this week that appears to show someone who looks like Wood being escorted back into what appears to be the lobby of Rufus Edmiston's law practice building apparently after the wreck had just happened. Shows the wreck. It was taken by, I think, an Uber driver or something along those lines, and he gave that to WRAL. So, I mean, it's definitely starts to open the question of who else might have been involved in this and how much of a cover up is going on.
Yeah, who recommended to her, hey, whether you've been drinking or not, we don't know, but I mean, we all have our guesses there since you ran into a parked car after a holiday party. Did someone say, it would be a great idea for you to not be here when the cops get here, because there are these people kind of ushering her into the building in this video. At least that's exactly what it looks like. And I mean, she is of singular appearance, so I don't think there's much doubt it's her in the video. We also learned this week that her vehicle assignment, because it was a state vehicle that she ran into this parked car, has been suspended. She hadn't had a state vehicle since December 8th, which is when the wreck happened. But this week she was like formally told, "Hey, we're gonna not give you a car back for a little while." I'm interested, Laura, in whether there's some quiet pressure on her to resign or to not run again. We're not seeing that in public statements, neither Republicans nor Democrats, other than the state Republican Party, calling on her to resign over this hit and run charge. I am interested, like, is there someone, though, behind the scenes, a Democrat who wants that job? And do they call on the governor or, quietly just try to get her moved out so that they can move in? Because, I mean, Democrats only have, 4 Council of State seats.
Right.
To lose one ultimately to a Republican in 2024 because of this, that's not on the Democrats' to-do list.
Right. And she did, if she does resign, which we don't know that she's going to at all at the moment, if she does resign, then Cooper would appoint her as successor, right?
Right. Exactly right.
So it'll be interesting to see who's interested in that job. It's hard. Okay. It's hard for me to imagine how you run again after this. But at the same time, you know what? There was a case of a congressman, I think back in the 1980s, that got a DUI and did an apology ad, I guess, and got reelected. So it can happen.
It'll be interesting. I mentioned real quickly Lane Rosen, who was her spokesperson over at the state auditor's office. He resigned late last week. We found out about that, I believe, this week. We don't know if it's related or not, but I mean, the timing is interesting. And he did like a TikTok video, like, of him resigning, like showing the letter and stuff. And that was a bit of a spectacle that I don't know that I recommend when your boss is in the middle of a scandal. But so
I thought
you will.
Just going to say it. I thought it was pretty funny, and he mentioned in the first line of his TikTok that he's quitting because his boss just got charged with misdemeanor hit and run. But first, Bojangles. I mean, it did make me laugh. So,
Yeah, I mean, sure. Will he make future employers laugh, I think, is the question.
No, maybe not. Maybe not. But not exactly quite quitting, but it was fun to watch. Apparently, he's hiking the Appalachian Trail, so we're told. Or so he says.
Yeah, good for him.
Other stuff going on yet this week. Oh, there's a rumor out there that Mike Regan, I think there's a report, was it Politico reported this? That Mike Regan might be.
Reuters.
Reuters
Reuters
okay.
has 4 anonymous sources that Michael Regan, Roy Cooper's former head of DEQ down here in North Carolina, and now EPA Administrator for the Biden administration, 4 sources anonymous for Reuters, saying that he's talking about leaving the EPA. A report that came out today, Friday, did not give a destination or a timetable. The EPA has pushed back, saying he has no plans to leave, noting there are all these major things happening now at EPA. There's a whole bunch of climate funding, infrastructure funding that the EPA is involved in. I have with a more North Carolina angle, 3 Democratic sources that say whatever this is going on with Regan in D.C., he's not coming back to North Carolina to run for governor in 2024. That is something that we'd kind of heard might be a possibility that Attorney General Josh Stein would not be the only Democratic candidate in that race, but that Regan might come back and run as well. Again, 3 Democratic sources saying nope, not his plan, although at some point he might want to run statewide. Any move away from the EPA here would be to the private sector, and that the timetable for that is very unclear.
Yeah, we had heard a lot of sort of murmurings that he might be ready to run for governor, but given the people who have gotten on the Stein bandwagon and endorsed him, including a lot of the African American legislators, it seems unlikely that that was a serious rumor. I mean, at least a rumor to take very seriously, at least at this point. So
yeah, I think that's fair to say, and I think we can probably put it to bed at this point.
Yeah. Another interesting thing this week, a blast from the past. When I first got to WRAL in 2011, one of the first stories I covered was a story about, at the legislature anyway, was a story about a staffer who had gone in and put a letter on the desks of the senators discussing William Holden. That's a former governor of North Carolina, a Republican who was impeached by Democratic lawmakers after, if I'm recalling this correctly, he called in the Army, the Union Army, to protect Black voters in, I think, Alamance County, if I'm remembering. I mean, this is all, it's been a minute, right? But at any rate, the state Senate was all set to pardon him, and he didn't feel that they should, and ended up kind of having to quit because it's against Senate rules for anyone but senators to put anything on senators' desks. So he kind of disappeared from North Carolina politics for the most part, although he's been working in some campaigns here and there for a while. So he resurfaced this week as a staff member under Speaker Moore, working for I guess the Legislative Oversight Committee. He was going to be a policy analyst, if I've got that right, I think. So
something like that. They were a little cagey about the title, but yeah, something in GovOps, hired by the House, which means Speaker of the House Tim Moore.
But then we got this email late Wednesday night, I guess it was, an email purporting to be from William Holden, that detailed a lot of pretty nasty accusations about him.
Yeah, with a lot of links to blog posts, some written under the name Carlton Huffman, some written under a pseudonym, as people do online, and some radio interviews he gave where he just said some really terrible things. I mean, talking about how 1962, when Ole Miss and other universities were integrated, being the beginning of a long slide from grace. I mean, basically espousing white supremacist, segregationist doctrine. And very quickly after that email went out, the Speaker's office, he resigned. I assume he was told to resign. Certainly there was a conversation that the Speaker's office had with him. They are not saying, they're not speaking about it over at the legislature, but it seems that they did not know about this. Carlton Huffman himself, I spoke to him. He insisted that we do a Zoom interview about it. He said he wanted his face to be, out front on this. And he said, I am so ashamed by how I used to behave and things I used to say, things I used to believe. Talked about how he has moved on and that he totally disavows all these terrible things that he said. Most of the stuff I saw, Laura, was from like the 2009, 2010 era. So a long time ago, although he's 38, so it's not like he was a kid here. And I also saw that Lars Dolder with the NC Insider quoted a blog post that was from as late as 2015. Mr. Huffman seemed very contrite when I talked to him, but of course this is not my sin to forgive.
That is absolutely true. So in other happenings this week, we should mention abortion already on the agenda. Democrats this week filed a bill that would codify Roe v. Wade under state law. That would be abortion access until viability, which is, I think, about 23 weeks right now. Of course, they want the state to go one direction, and the Republican majority wants the state to go the other direction. And so we're kind of waiting to see, what the Republicans file on that. But the Democrats have come out pretty quickly and pretty strongly with their position. And they made it pretty clear. I would say Senator Sidney Batch did yesterday in the press conference I held about it, that there was not a lot of room for negotiation. They said they are not interested in shortening the time window that women can access abortion.
Yeah, which is at the 20-week mark now. And I mean,
at the moment,
this is just going to be something that comes down to a veto fight one way or another.
Right. In the meantime, as leadership arguments in both parties, I think you reported that Michael Whatley is running for RNC co-chair.
I saw this because former President Donald Trump endorsed him for co-chair of the Republican National Committee. They're going to gather, Republicans will, next week in California to decide those leadership positions. Whatley did not respond to a text I sent him seeking confirmation, but again, former President Trump has endorsed Whatley for that position, so clearly he's seeking it.
Right. And then on the Democratic side, there's also some drama, right?
Yeah, the Democrats will gather in February, I believe February 11th, to elect their new chair to the state Republican Party here in North Carolina. There are several candidates. From what I've heard, which is not a ton, so don't be taking this to the bank. But Bobby Richardson is probably the favorite to retain that. Has support from the party establishment, which generally means the governor, the attorney general, the leaders of the party, and yeah, so could be looking for new leadership in the Republican Party, and Democrats are going to gather to decide, what direction they'll go
Yeah, and I mean,
early next
let's
month
keep
or mid next month.
in mind. I mean, the backing of the establishment does not always assure you in North Carolina politics in either party. I'm thinking especially of I think it was Easley had endorsed. I think it was Ed Turlington. Hold on one second. Sorry. Um, excuse me, for party chair. This is back in like 2006 or something. And the executive committee ended up choosing Jerry Meek, who was an attorney from Charlotte and a total outsider. So, we've seen similar things on the Republican side as well. So, yeah, I know there's a lot of sort of disgruntlement among Democrats after the last election, saying that they felt like the Democrats were sort of like, dead out of the gate, just sort of like never got off the ground, didn't have what they needed to win the campaigns. So, I don't know where the buck stops for that and how far this sort of progressive group is going to get. But it does sound like it's going to be a long day on the day that they get together to make that decision.
Absolutely. On the lighter side, Senator Tom Tillis made the Onion, our friend and former colleague Matt Burns, flag this for us. If you've ever given money to one of those charities that helps kids and acts like you've kind of adopted the kid from afar, maybe you get a letter from the child who you're helping, and it talks about like, well, I really appreciate the money that you've donated. Help me do this, this, this. Basically, the Onion's article had Tom Tillis writing one of those letters to a donor, or someone writing a letter on his behalf about talking
On
about
his behalf,
how
right?
Senator Tillis had been able to use the money that they'd sent to Washington for. It's kind of funny. You can
I
check
don't
it
know
out.
why they picked him out, though.
Why not, right? I don't know.
I
Maybe
guess
because he spells Tom with an H, and that's kind of a funny name. Who
maybe.
knows? Que-
So
Question not the Onion.
some shifting around. Joy Hicks has moved over from DEQ to working for Speaker Tim Moore. She also worked at DOR, I think, and fiscal research, as you mentioned. So long time, lot of General Assembly connections there.
Yeah, she's gone from lobbying there to some sort of advisor with the Speaker's office. That happened this month. Also, this month, I think this week, Enlace Latino NC, and forgive me if my Spanish pronunciation there is bad. Enlace means link. It's a digital publication. They're going to get $1 million grant from the American Journalism Project. That's real money. One of three entities to get this grant. The others are in Texas and Nebraska. A couple of quick final things from the General Assembly this week as they gathered again. Senator Mary Willis Bodie is sitting in the same chair in the Senate as her grandfather.
That's
I
cool.
think that's one of those things that, yes, it is cool, but also it has something to say about how power works in our
Yeah,
society.
yeah, no kidding.
I mean, there's 10 million people in
Dynastic.
this state.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but that is kind of cool, as you say. And then Garland Pierce, Democrat in the House, Representative Garland Pierce, he is also going to be a committee chair. So now we have four. We thought it was three, and now it's four Democrats who will have some sort of co-chairmanship of a committee. He'll be on families, children, and aging. Speculation has always been, Laura, that he is the vote Republicans need to get an abortion bill past the governor, that he would be the one Democratic vote. He's a preacher, fairly moderate on social issues, I guess.
I could see
would he be that vote?
I could see Michael Ray being the vote too.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. I think
yeah,
Republicans, Ray got a chairmanship too. I think Republicans are seeding that ground quite well, but I just to connect a potential some potential dots for people.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's noteworthy that Garland Pierce has voted for bills that limit abortion in the past, but has not voted, as far as I know, to overturn the governor's veto. So I'll
Yeah,
have
I
to
can't
double
think of
check
one
that.
either. So
Yeah. So yeah.
yeah.
So well, that'll be interesting. And so yeah.
I
I
think
think
that's all I've got.
that's about all I've got too. Next week we're going to have the confirmation hearings for a couple of appointees, Cooper appointees, including Todd Ishii over at, I think that's corrections, so, or juvenile justice is it perhaps. So we're, they are definitely getting down to work slowly but surely. But of course, we'll be watching the avalanche of bills for you and pointing out the highlights for you next week here on the Wrap.